And actually, all right, let me get the agenda here so we can all be looking at the same thing. Okay, now I just need a thumbs up from someone that you can see my screen.
Ah, beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Why don't we get started, and I'll try not to get too distracted with people trickling in. Welcome to our April edition of IADSD. We have a good program for you today. A friend of the club, Paula McCormack, will be giving us her review of a really wonderful book by the name of Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents. And this is a book by Isabel Wilkerson. And it's a book about sort of a hidden caste system in the US with similarities and differences with modern day India and Nazi Germany. And hopefully it will inspire you to view the world a little differently and our society a little differently, and maybe even pick up the book and read it. So we're looking forward to that. I should also note that it's a new year, Persian New Year. I know we're a little late to start this year. We canceled our March meeting because of a lot of our members had a lot of commitments during that time. So it's a wonderful year, 1401. And then I'll also give a quick talk about the upcoming June 7th primary. Sort of nothing, no deep dives, but just some broad strokes into what you should be expecting. It's always good to be a little ahead of the game. The other thing I would ask, especially for our new members, is, we'd love to get your new ideas about what you'd like to have in this club, and how, and what is a good thing for our club to focus on in the months ahead. So we can have a quick chat about that, maybe a few minutes on that towards the end. So I'm going to just jump right in. Actually, we're still waiting for some of our presenters here who are coming soon, should be coming in shortly, including Shervin. But I'm just going to go ahead and we can catch them up a little later after we get things started. So let me turn it over to you, Sudhi John. Maybe you can start by giving us a update on IADSD. I'm sorry,
IADC. Sure. Can I share my screen? Are you able to make me a co-host?
Let me do that. Give me 1 second while I fumble with this thing.
All right. Sorry, I didn't realize I was going first, but totally okay.
Okay. And
so while that happens,
I'm going to take a little while to figure this out.
Okay, no worries. For those who have probably not met me before, I'm the acting president of the Iranian American Democrats of California. It's a statewide organization. It was formed, formally announced in August. In we had an event to help with the recall or stopping the recall, and then we officially had our first election process in November, and our organization is set up such that the president and the vice president rotates. Therefore, I will be in this position only for a year, and then it will rotate to someone else who would be elected within their region. So just a little bit about us, Iranian American Democrats of California. Our main mission is to educate, engage, and empower the Iranian community, Iranian American community, and allies. And what we are hoping to do is to not only educate folks to be able to be better voters, more engaged voters, but also collectively be able to provide the information that is needed, where we would be able to empower more candidates, Iranian American candidates running for different positions. So it's double-fold. We do have a monthly newsletter that goes out, that we started from the beginning of the year. The fourth one will be coming out soon. I will share later the link to that. I would appreciate if you like to receive that, to subscribe, or better yet, become a member. And then you will get the newsletter, and of course, you will be helping the organization advance. So I'm going to just share my screen because we have some really great news to share. We had our first endorsement. You're able to see my screen?
Yes,
Yes.
looks good.
All right, very good. So we had our first rounds of endorsements that occurred. Moz contributed a lot to that process, as well as the other committees. So the endorsement committee had actually 15 candidates that they brought into the steering committee. One did not get seconded, and these 14 were, we were delighted to endorse them. As you can see, they are from wide range, and our priority was only on those candidates that CADEM had, California Democratic Party had endorsed, or those races that are for sure going to be a part of the primary. So as you can see, the top ones are mainly the statewide candidates, and the bottom row are all the congressional candidates. And we are, getting more involved with those with these campaigns. And it was so interesting because for Katie Porter, actually the Iranian American community, not necessarily IADC, but a few active members of her campaign that are Iranians, had a fundraiser event for her. And that morning, I also sent her the formal announcement that she's been endorsed. And she came to there and she said, my first thought was, who are these people? And then I flipped on your website. I'm like, oh my God, so many familiar faces. And that's exactly what we want. We want all of them and all the other ones that comes, that they have some familiar faces, that they can connect, and they would be a champion of our values. So I invite you to visit our website. Is IADMCA.org. I will put it in the chat as well, and read about our bylaws, read about our mission, read about our values, and more importantly, please, reach out to us, share your concerns, your suggestions, and get involved. There's so many different committees that you can get involved. And one of the things that as a member you will have is the opportunity, every time you're going to be considering even someone for endorsement, we send an announcement out to all of our paid members and ask them to provide either positive or negative testimonials. And that's how you become part of that process, because we definitely, we have right now 60 and growing, paid members. However, at the end of the day, it's not our individual decision. This is to represent the Iranian American Democrats of California, and all of you are among that, fit that definition, and we hope that you would be able to contribute to this process. So with that, I think I covered what I was supposed to say. I'm happy to answer any questions, or Mazjan, did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, I wanted to add a couple of words. If you could still share that screen, I wanted to
Sure.
Emphasize the fact that we did not just go look for Iranian American sounding names and automatically endorse them. I think that's an important thing. Obviously, we want to highlight Iranian American candidates. We've been historically politically underrepresented, and this is a good avenue for elevating some of those candidates, but they're great candidates, and that's the important point to highlight. And the way we went about doing this is we had a lively debate about what our values are. We went back and forth and kind of distilled it down to the essence of what we as a group stood for, and those are essentially the sort of the backdrop for all the candidate evaluation. So I think just by my count here, I'm seeing maybe five Iranian. Well, I guess you can include.
No,
Anna
there's only
there.
3 Iranian, four Iranian and an Afghan sister. Aisha is Afghan, and Sarah Aminzadeh, Shebra Kanatari Johnson, Anna Aisha is an Iranian Assyrian, Iranian Assyrian, and then Shervin Aazami. Those are the of the 14. Those are the ones that are Iranian Americans or allies, and then all the other ones. I'm sure. I hope that you have heard of them. If you have not, folks that have worked with them, we felt that they will definitely be good champions, and they have been very involved with the Iranian American community, or we want them to be more involved, even more involved, because they have such large constituency of Iranian Americans. And we also were very focused about immigrants as general and refugees, and looking at those areas that we will have more concentrations of refugees, and having the right person in the office that will support their rights and their dignity was very important to us.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Sudi John. Any questions for Sudi?
And I just wanted to, I just wanted to just give you a glimpse of our our website, and there's a lot of information in here, and our newsletter content also transfers to our website. So please visit it, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you again, and thanks for all the great work you've been doing, Sudi John. I see Shervin has joined us. Let me give him an opportunity to reintroduce himself and remind everybody that we have a fabulous Iranian American candidate here in California. And this is something I'm going to touch on later as part of the sort of June 7th ballot. One of the things I always like to say is primaries are way more important than general elections. So I think this is a good time to be paying attention. And historically, primaries have low turnout, especially on the Democratic side. So your vote counts even more when you not just participate, but actually do your homework and look at the different candidates, especially ones that may not be as well funded or as tied to establishment. So it's a good opportunity for change, and not make it a sort of a choice between the lesser of two evils in the general election. So with that, I'm going to pass the floor over to Shervin to give us an update on his campaign.
Appreciate that. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Ma, so much for the invitation. Sudi John, great to see you. Great to see everybody else as well. My name is Shervin Aazami. I'm a father, husband, public health activist, and immigrant running for Congress in my hometown, West San Fernando Valley, California's 32nd district. I'm a former legislative director on Capitol Hill, leading indigenous healthcare advocacy, fighting for fulfillment of treaty obligations to tribal nations and native peoples. Running for office on a proudly, unapologetically progressive campaign, fighting for single-payer Medicare for all, housing as a human right, climate justice and a Green New Deal, living wages and union rights for all, a humane immigration system, and divestment from the US war machine, and a real reckoning with our sordid legacy of militarism, occupation, and imperialism abroad and at home. And we are very, very lucky and excited and honored to have the endorsement of amazing organizations like Iranian American Democrats of California, of course, running to be the first Iranian American Democrat in US Congress. It's a sincere honor to have IADC support. We've also been endorsed by the National Iranian American Council and also by the Iranian American PAC. In fact, we have over 24 local and national political organization and Democratic Club endorsements. In fact, we're the only challenger to Brad Sherman with any political organizations as endorsees. So we're very honored for all of the support. We've raised over $250,000 just from grassroots donors. And as Ma said, we are coming before the primary here on June 7th. And in fact, in less than, it's around 2.5 weeks now, before the mail-in ballots start dropping. So we are really getting into crunch time. And I know that we have a real shot at unseating this 26-year Warhawk incumbent for a number of reasons. First being that the district was already solidly progressive at D+18 before redistricting. Now we're D+38. And we were already a Bernie district in 2020. And now we're even bluer. The perennial Republican challenger that used to always run and had broad name ID is no longer running. Instead, it's two lesser known Republican challengers who will hopefully split the GOP vote. And really, we're the only progressive challenger from within the Democratic Party. There's another candidate who has been backed by the cryptocurrency community, and we're seeing how cryptocurrency PACs are financing establishment candidates against progressives across the country. And so while we're feeling really confident, we're still very focused on making sure that we're reaching as many voters as possible. And in terms of Brad's vulnerability, this is the first time that he has poured in close to $1 million of his own money into this race. First time he's ever done that in his 26-year incumbency. On top of that, he's been sending mailers almost weekly to constituents using taxpayer money, doing it, mind you. Even though he's got a $4 million corporate campaign war chest, he's still using taxpayer money to send his mailers because that's a benefit that incumbents have that others don't. And I'm hearing it from his strongest supporters. They're like, we have never received this much mail from Brad Sherman. So we have him on his back legs. We were forcing him to defend everything in every single meeting that he goes. And we've connected with over 100,000 voters in our district so far. And this week, we're putting in an order to send mailers to roughly 60,000 households. So considering at least 2 people, but averaging actually around 2.6 people per household, it's very likely we're reaching over 120,000 people with these mailers. And of course, mailers, as folks know, are very, very expensive. And so to the extent folks are willing to donate to our People First campaign, make sure we can send even more mailers, hire more field organizers, scale up our digital advertising even more. Everything we can do to reach voters is going to be extremely important in this final stretch before the primary. And I know that if we leave no stone unturned, we will be successful because people are really excited about the opportunity, like Ma said, to finally vote for a candidate they want to vote for, not just go out there and vote for the establishment Democrat because that's the only option. We are finally giving voters the option to vote for an unapologetic progressive. And it's really humbling to have the support of groups like this. And we're just really excited and looking forward to these last few weeks. So I will stop there and see if folks have any questions.
Just a quick question, maybe a statement and a question. I think a couple of things I would highlight about Shervin is, a lot of progressive
We're having
candidates.
a hard time hearing you.
Oh no, it's my internet connection. How about now? Am I back?
Yes.
Am I moving again? Is it better?
Yes.
Okay. A lot of progressive candidates talk about things like Green New Deal and universal health care and so forth. But Shervin actually has expertise on these subjects, especially healthcare. And I love that he has a focus on the defunding the war machine, which is a huge, huge problem today. So again, I want to thank Shervin for taking this big step to run. I know there's a lot of forces that are going to come after you, but we really appreciate having a great candidate, and we hope to see you as the first Iranian American Democrat in Congress. Does anyone have any questions for Shervin?
Mori John has his hand up.
Shervin John, you
John,
have the same first name as my son.
I remember you mentioning that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you put your information in the chat so people who want to contribute to your campaign can do that?
Of course. Yes, I will.
Mori John, I did that already.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Sweetie John. Yeah.
You're
It's
welcome.
already there then.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, please throw some dollars at him. You know, he's not funded by PACs, corporate PACs. So unlike his opponents, I can't believe Sherman just threw $1 million of his own money. That's just
Yeah,
Because
and he's
I shouldn't be
also one of the
surprised.
top recipients of money from the payday lending industry, believe it
Oh,
or not.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty gross.
And he was also against the Iran nuclear deal, correct?
And he still celebrates that vote, being one of 19 Democrats to vote against it. That's right.
That's probably another way he does a lot of fundraising, is by being against the nuclear deal.
That and a lot of money from the Mujahideen Khalq. He spoke at their rally twice now. In 2019, he was the only Democrat to speak at their rally, and he spoke again this year as well. And he and Mariam Rajavi are close friends, apparently. So.
Yeah, one of the, not to belabor this, but one of the things that has been eye-opening for me the last few years is just how much of an advantage incumbents have, just artificial advantage that the party gives them. So again, I want to emphasize how important it is for, I know we're not in your district, but a lot of us know people in LA and in the Valley. So please spread the word. And, you know, I encourage anybody to volunteer their time as well. All right, anything else for Shervin before we move on? All right, thanks again.
Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you. We're going to do things a little bit out of order. We have a couple of candidates who joined a little late. I think they probably want to do a 1-minute introduction. We do have a couple of agenda items we need to get to that are a little longer, and I don't want to keep everybody here. So we're going to keep it to 1 minute each. If you can raise your hand if you have a announcement to make. I think Mr. Schmachowski had one, and I think so does Mr. Fleming. Okay, let's start with Mr. Schmachowski.
Salam, Chituri. You know, I'm probably the greatest friend of the Iranian community. Ali Goldshin endorsed my campaign years ago, and I knew all the Iranian at Qualcomm and in Europe and France. Bani Saad, President Bani Saad, I knew, and Gupsadeh and all of them before and after the revolution. But you know, my friends, that will not get me elected, and that will not endear me to any of you. I know that. I'm aware of that. It doesn't matter how much I love all of you. I realize the truth, the hard truth. I'm a candidate in District 2, San Diego City Council, and I'm totally against the YIMBY group coming into our community and transforming our neighborhoods into a little Calcutta, I call it. Also, in Claremont, where I live, we need a senior center, and I would propose one to be built right next to the pool, the swimming pool at the South Claremont Rec. Many ideas I have, good ideas, but I'll leave it at that. I'll leave why my camp manager tells me, he says, Danny, don't tell
Sorry,
the
I was
people
on
the
mute.
story.
I think that's time. Thank you, Mr.
Sure, thank you.
Schmachowski. Sorry, that's a mouthful.
Well, you know, I can,
Your
if I
name
can
is almost as hard
yeah.
as mine to pronounce. But thank you. You can put your info on the chat. Let's move to candidate Fleming.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Michael Fleming. I'm running for San Diego Superior Court seat number 35. I'm running on a platform of trying to use our collaborative courts to rehabilitate rather than incarcerate some of our most dangerous, our most endangered populations, such as our veterans, our mentally ill, our drug addicted, and our homeless. I've been endorsed by Randy Mize, a number of judges. I also have been endorsed by La Raza, Earl B. Gillum, South Asian Bar Association, and a number of other community activists. I just wanted to come by, say hello, introduce myself, and just, you know, put myself out there. So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And if you have any questions, I'll take those as well. Oh, by the way, I'm a public defender because that's always the first question I get. I've been with the office for about 8.5 years. And prior to that, I worked for the Marine Corps as a civilian lawyer. And then prior to that, I worked for Barbara Boxer's district office and Senator Harry Reid on Capitol Hill at the Democratic Policy Committee. And that should be under a minute.
Thank you very much. That was perfect. I'm sorry, I do have a question, which is, can you,
Sorry, I keep turning on my camera.
Can you explain the district situation for like who who gets to vote for you? Which part of
I'm
San
the
Diego?
entire county of San Diego.
Okay.
It's kind of crazy because as a judge, we run almost as big as, I guess it's even bigger than the Board of Supervisors. It's the whole county. So lots of voters, lots of meetings, lots of people out
Okay.
there.
Very good. So you'll be on the June 7th primary
I will
ballot.
be.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And I think we want to, oh, is there a question?
One more question.
Go ahead, Nadia, you can go next.
I couldn't tell if Maury's hand is up or not. His digital hand is up.
Oh, no, sorry. I should know it.
Thank you. Thank you, candidate Fleming. I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about the collaborative court system, just how it operates today. I know there's drug court, homeless court, even just a brief overview of what the system looks like.
Absolutely. So our collaborative courts are very heavily monitored courts where we try to pick different populations to monitor. So there is a drug court, a specific mental health court, a specific homeless court. And what we found is, for instance, in homeless court, we save, for every $1 we spend, we save $4 because we don't have to pay transportation costs, booking costs, housing costs. And we've seen this phenomenon that every time we bring in people who are homeless or mentally ill, we take on these huge medical bills because they've been on the street and they haven't been having their medicine, that kind of thing. Same thing with the mentally ill. So all of these courts would hope to cut down those costs. But also we've seen when people take an extra step with homeless court and veterans court and mental health court and they're supervised, they tend not to reoffend. So that's the biggest thing, is cutting down on recidivism and turning these people back from people in the criminal justice system to productive members of society, and also restoring our mentally ill. Because I just feel that the jail shouldn't be a place where we're housing our mentally ill.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all. I'll just hang out for a little while until.
Yeah,
next
please
time.
do. Yeah, please do. We have a good program here, and I think you might find the subject interesting. So let's jump ahead to our featured speaker here. Paula McCormack is a retired school counselor focused on teaching students, training teachers, and conducting mediation. She has always been passionate about civil rights and conflict resolution in all of its forms. Paula has 2 university degrees, a BA in psychology and an MA in school psychology, along with training in negotiation techniques, mediation, and conflict resolution. Paula, welcome to IADSD, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Maz. All right, let me share my screen.
Okay, great. And by the way, we budgeted about 40 minutes for this topic. I don't know if possible, if you can leave like 10 minutes at the end for questions and discussion, that would be ideal.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
I'm planning to do that now. Let me see. Click share in green. Oh,
We can see, actually, we can see.
maybe now I do the PowerPoint. There it is. Do you see that?
Yes.
Oh, we see your
Yay.
PowerPoint now. You did it. You did it.
That's my
You did-
big issue.
That's the biggest hurdle. And do you see
That's
the
my
full
biggest
screen?
hurdle.
There's
All
a,
right.
there's a full screen icon. Do you know how to do full screen?
Yes. Oh boy, I'm gonna click on this one and hope it works. No, that didn't do it.
It's the one, if you look at the bottom right corner.
Bottom right, okay.
Okay, move a little to the left, just a tiny bit. You were almost there. You're almost there. It's that first icon on your left, that one.
This one?
Yeah,
Click it?
that should work.
Aha,
And then you can use your arrow to go forward.
how do I get the next slide?
Actually, there's these icons on the lower left. Do you see the little arrows?
Everything's gone now. Oh wait,
They
yes,
come
I
and
I
go.
do. There it is, there it is.
Yeah,
And so that's going forward, right?
forward, correct.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, folks, thank you for having me. A few years ago, when I was living in Moore Park, I was at the veterinarian's office with my pet, and I was chatting with the receptionist there, as I did frequently. She was very excited because her oldest son had just been accepted into the University of Chicago, which is very prestigious. He was very excited to go. He was a top scholar, got a full scholarship. He was a very, very good athlete and a good kid, just all around with character. And I had two boys go through college too, so I know what that's like. It's a very exciting time for them. And she looked at me at one point and she said to me, I have to teach him how to dress and how to walk. Now, she's a white woman. So I looked at her and I thought, why on earth do you do that? I didn't do any of that with my kids. And she said, my son is Black. And it was like ice water hit me. It's one thing to hear about these things. It's another thing to experience the difference between one mother and me, with the kids having the same experience and what she had to feel and what I had to feel. And when I was growing up in the 60s, I really thought that we had turned a corner as far as civil rights went. It was a wonderful time to be young. We were all idealistic. We had laws that supported everybody. We were looking at everything that was in the status quo and questioning things and trying to make them better. And I really thought we had done a good job. And then when I see these things happening, or I face this kind of stuff that happened with my receptionist, it just tells me that we're not there yet. And why? Why is that? Why wasn't it enough? Then I read this book and it all came together. Isabel Wilkerson asserts that we have an actual caste system in this country, which is unnamed and unacknowledged and has been in place since before we were a nation. It's a brilliant concept, and as difficult as it is to hear it or consider it, I really do think she's absolutely right. All right, let's go with this. Yay. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, this is her definition. A caste is an artificial construct, social construct, a fixed and embedded ranking of human value that sets the presumed supremacy of one group against the presumed inferiority of other groups on the basis of ancestry and other immutable traits, which are neutral in the abstract, but are ascribed life and death meaning in a hierarchy favoring the dominant caste. Next is, let's do a little bit of American history and how it all began. Early in the 1600s, colonists in the United States, which were not United States yet, it was North America, and mostly British, recognized that they needed workers to transform this new land that they were taking into the civilization that they wanted and to maintain their budding economy. And at this time, it was very common for greed to overtake any conscience. Africans were far from their homeland and wore the mark of being different by their skin color. So they wanted to use these people because they couldn't run away, they couldn't blend into the population, and they were brought here by ships, and that's what they decided to do. So they enslaved them. The European colonists justified enslaving them, first of all, by religious means, citing the Old Testament of the Bible to interpret their centrality or superiority. In addition, the African strengths became their undoing in some respects. They knew how to grow the crops, the rice, etc., that were being grown. They tended to be immune to the Europeans' diseases, and they were generally very strong people. However, the colonists, in continuing to rationalize their enslavement, ascribed different qualities to them that have endured in some measure through today, and some of the prejudices that you'll hear about. They were dumb, reinforced by having laws against teaching any slave to read or write. They were criminal, reinforced by laws against any form of self-defense. They were lazy, to justify using the bullwhip to keep them working very long hours, sometimes up to 15 hours a day. And they were immoral, to justify the rapes and other degradation that was imposed upon them. It was a complete subjugation of an entire group of people, and it went on for centuries before it was abolished. We didn't become a country until the late 1700s, and slavery was not abolished in this country until 1865. It's important to note as well that when other European immigrants came to this land, they quickly assimilated and distanced themselves from the obviously different Black slaves, and after that, Black people. A few things happened. First of all, there were no white people in Europe. In Europe, you had Italians, you had Norwegians, you had Irish, you had Poles, you had Greeks, but they were not considered white. They were all different depending upon their countries. And in reality, when Isabel Wilkerson, this is funny too, she was giving a speech on her book to a group of people, and a young African woman came up to her, and said, "There are no Black people in Africa." And she said, "What do you mean? I think most people in Africa are Black." And she said, "No, we have Tutsis, we have Hutus, we have Ibdas, we have, in other words, all the ethnic groups and tribes and nations. But they were not considered Black, and the Europeans were not considered white and grouped that way until they came to this country. And in order to separate themselves, and we had created what, again, we really do consider was more of a caste system. When the European immigrants came, they were immediately one step above the lowest, no matter what their situation. So they distanced themselves very happily, favorably from Black people. It gave the Europeans instant status, no matter what they came with. And right off the bat, they not only distanced themselves, but they used Black people a little bit as scapegoats for anything that was going wrong for them, because they felt that they could do that, particularly in the Civil War, when Europeans came over and thought, oh. So they really resented the Black people. So all these things kind of came together and separated Blacks from the white groups and created a very, very negative way of being together. A little bit about past slavery, which brings us to today. After Abraham Lincoln's assassination, and he was the president who fought the Civil War in order to free the slaves. There was something called Black Codes and Jim Crow laws. Now, the 13th Amendment, which freed the slaves, said that nobody could be enslaved in this country, was a federal law. The Jim Crow laws and the Black Codes were state and local laws, which means that the states did what they wanted to do, and the local towns and villages and cities did what they wanted to do. And quite often they were very, very much against what the federal government had said in terms of slavery. In 1870, Black men got the right to vote, but in reality were hindered by these state and local laws. Freedom was in words only. That's important. It was in words only. In all the laws, the local laws, Black people were still being subjugated. In more recent days, which is why I thought things were getting better, in 1948, the military became integrated. 1954, schools became integrated. 1964, we had the Civil Rights Act, which banned all forms of segregation. In 1965, we had the Voting Rights Act, giving everybody the right to vote. And in 1968, the Fair Housing Act to stop discrimination. And just a little side note, I didn't find out until probably 2 or 3 years ago when I was watching a documentary that the house that I grew up in Long Island, New York, had a clause at the very bottom of it. And they actually showed this on the documentary. They were talking about these homes. And it said, only people of the Caucasian race may purchase this home, right? Now, who knew that? I didn't know that. I was a kid growing up. I had no clue. That was in the 50s. In 1968, supposedly that was abolished. But the following sentence is the most important thing. All of these were a struggle and are a struggle to enforce. And that's the problem in this country. We have the laws, but we don't have the customs. And if this truly is a caste system, we also have a lot of deeply embedded feelings and thoughts about Black people that are just not right, have nothing to do with reason or rationality. But with this kind of history, you can see how that would come about. It's important to note that a hierarchy of caste is not about morality. It doesn't mean white people or anybody. and whoever's highest in the caste, and Hindu in India, it's different, is a better person. It's really very operational. It's about power. Who has it and who does not? It's about resources. Who is worthy of them and who is not? It's about who is accorded respect, who is accorded a level of competence, and who is not. How does this happen? How does this keep going on and on and on? The tentacles are how this infiltrates our society. Exposed over generations, we as human beings learn to believe that the incomprehensible is the way things are supposed to be. This is human nature, folks. It really is. And this is what we have to be careful about. If you see something over and over again and you grow up with it, if you do not question it and actively step outside of your perspective, then you think that's the way things are supposed to be. We are all susceptible to conditioning, and we have a bias for the familiar. And when reinforced by cultural norms or experiences, those behaviors adhere more strongly to our ways of thinking. Caste is insidious and powerful because it is not hatred, or not even necessarily personal. That's important because people will say things like, I'm not a racist, I'm not prejudiced, I have a Black friend, or I think Black people are fine, or so they're not hating. It's not a hatred, although for some people it certainly is. We still see that. But it still has that feeling of they're fine, they're good people, but they're just not quite the same. Okay, that's just the truth. That is what's in people's minds and hearts from living with this for centuries and growing up with it. So why do we call it caste and not racism? Racism is an action or an institution that harms a group of others and has come to mean a character flaw carried by individuals or societies against the disfavored race, defined by arbitrary physical characteristics. And what's important about that is you'll hear people say, I'm not a racist, because in their heart, they really probably don't feel they are or don't want to be. But what they don't understand is it's not about disliking somebody or hating somebody or being racist consciously about somebody. It's all of us have grown up with this, and we are all susceptible to its influences. And that's what we have to fight. A caste system is an action or structure that limits or holds back a group, puts them in a defined ranking of worth, elevating or denigrating, and is fixed. It has much more systematic power. Skin color is a fact. Race is a social construct. What we see are the learned social meanings and stereotypes associated with them. I have one grandfather who is fully Norwegian. I have another grandfather who was fully Italian. They do not have similar skin colors. One is very, very pale. One is very, very olive skinned. They are very different heights, and they have very different facial features and very different cultural behaviors from where they came. And yet they are considered white. It's purely arbitrary. If you chose height, for example, and I love this example, if you chose height as the arbitrary feature to determine which race is which, then the Dutch people would be the same race as the Tutsis in Rwanda, because they're all very, very tall people as a rule. So you see how arbitrary it is? And if you try to even find the line where white goes to the very darkest, we are all gradations of all of it. So it really is not physically valid. It is so much of a social construct, and it is so destructive that we have to understand it first before we can even deal with it. And that's why it says what we see or what we perceive are the learned social meanings that come with our color, our race, our caste, and the stereotypes associated with them. He defines 8 pillars that she says upholds the caste in this country and in India. And here's where she does some really good comparative research. And as far as I know, and as far as she knew, she's the only person who's ever really compared castes between India, which we all know and acknowledge as a caste system, and Nazi Germany, which set up a caste system, even though it was short-lived, and us, which denies that we have a caste system. So here's some of her evidence. It starts with divine will and laws of nature. And in the US, we relied on the Old Testament, the Bible, and Indian people used the Hindu text. So they use spirituality or divine will to support what they're doing. Heritability in the United States, particularly in Virginia in the 1600s, anybody who was Black was considered Black through their mother. And in India, you are considered, your caste level is brought to you through your father, passes through the father. Endogamy and the control of marriage and mating. For a long time, it was illegal for people in this country, different races, to intermarry. And I'm just going to keep saying white and Black as opposed to getting into all the other races, because that's basically who we're talking about. And the danger in that, besides the fact that it makes no sense emotionally or any other socially anyway, is that it keeps the groups separated, polarized. They can't develop empathy with each other. They can't develop a sense of connectedness as Americans or as citizens or as, you know, people, neighbors, or anything, because they're separated by law from intermarriage. The next one is purity versus pollution. And I personally think this is one of the worst because of the deep psychological impact of this one. All caste systems tend to think of the pure race as pure and the disfavored race as polluted. And there are instances obviously in India, where certain castes could not go into the water of the upper caste people. They could not bathe together, they couldn't swim together, they couldn't do anything. That was true in the Third Reich as well, and it was certainly true in this country up until, and I can tell you this, up until very, very recently, where the Black people could not swim in white people's pools, they couldn't in pools with white people, they could not swim on their side of the beach in the ocean. And there's one incident where, I don't want to bring up a lot of this because they're horrible, but you know, where some teenage kid was swimming in the ocean and ended up drifting into the white area and was dragged out of the water and was beaten up for it. And this kind of stuff was happening here. How does that affect somebody growing up psychologically? How do you feel good about yourself at all when you feel that your very essence is polluting to other people? You know, that is so deep and so embedded in people's psyche. I just think that one's one of the worst because it affects how you feel about yourself. Okay, the next one is occupational hierarchy, and we have plenty of evidence of that. We have not let Black individuals reach higher level jobs, and we all know that. And that's why we have quotas now, because we're forcing people to say, you know, you've got to integrate a little bit better than you have been. And they resent that too. Dehumanization and stigma has gone on for a very, very long time. And this is a war against truth. This is telling you and me and all of us that what you see with your eyes, what you could feel with your heart, what you could know with your mind, because what's reasonable and what's not, is not true. That they're telling you that an entire group of people is dehumanized. And they do this in war, by the way, as you guys probably know. The enemy is one group and they're completely dehumanized. Otherwise, how would a soldier kill them as easily as they could? You'd see somebody, maybe you'd empathize with them a little bit, and you can't do that. In order to do that, to kill somebody or to really put them down so badly as this has been happening, you have to stigmatize them. They have to be dehumanized as a group. The way that hurts the in-group or the upper caste, the people doing it, and this is significant with what we're seeing in politics today and a whole lot of things, is those people are susceptible now to group thought. If you allow your individual critical thinking abilities and give them up, if you allow those to go the way of the wind and give them up to the group, and what the group tells you is right or wrong, who's humanized, who's dehumanized, then you are already jumping into group thought, and it's much easier then to, especially if you take that group and you put them outside of the norms of humanity, any action against them is seen as reasonable. And I think that explains a little bit of how over the decades, horrendous things have happened. I mean, I really horrendous things. Even you see what's happening now with some of the police issues, and there was another one a few days ago. It doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. And it's seen as reasonable by some people. And I've heard this. I hate to tell you this, but I have heard this. I hear both sides of a lot of things, because they see these people as different and lesser than. And we have to come to terms with that. Terror as enforcement, cruelty as means of control. We all know that that happened in Nazi Germany. We all know that that happened in India, and it happened here plenty of times. And what that does is it preempts you from even thinking of defying what you should be doing. It keeps you in your place. Inherent superiority versus inherent inferiority means that no matter what the lower caste has in terms of beauty, intellect, deservedness, goodness, character, any artistic ability, anything, they still have to be deferent to the upper caste. No insolence will be tolerated at all. There's an example that she gives with a researcher who was in Mississippi in 1935 when the Jim Crow laws were really strong. And he was researching Jim Crow. And at the time he had a driver driving him around. And as he was interviewing Black people, he mentioned to his driver, you know, these people are so polite to me. Even the older men are calling me sir, right? Which is a sign of extreme politeness. The driver looked at him and responded, "That's because they have to," and laughed. You feel that? You feel what that is? That's because they have to. We have them in that position, and that's what they have to do. No insolence. Some of these behaviors are simply survival mechanisms. The politeness and whatever else, and including with the receptionist I was telling you about, she's teaching her son survival skills in this country, because she knows that he can be the best kid on earth. He can be walking home from a party. He can be just good. But if there's anything about him that doesn't look exactly perfect and just right, just the color of his skin is enough for somebody to give him a hard time. So she, as a mother, has to worry about that constantly. And I, as a mother, have to worry about my kids for everything else like that we all worry about. But I don't have that. And I think that's what hit me the most, the unfairness of that and how wrong it is. Okay, now one more piece of evidence to support caste system in this country. And this I did not know until I read this book, because it was not taught to us, because I don't think many people know this. But Isabel Wilkerson was good enough to research and found this out. In 1934, when the Nazis came into power in Germany, they were looking around to build their society to protect the racial purity of the Aryan race, which was Nordic and which was white and blonde. Okay, so as they were doing that, they wanted a legal framework. They didn't want to just create negative feelings about people. They wanted an actual legal framework embedded in their laws and in their society to ostracize the Jewish people and to create distancing, but also hatred and discussed so that they could isolate them and make them the lower caste. And then eventually, they weren't planning at this time to exterminate them, but that's eventually what they tried to do. So they looked around, they thought, how can we do this? And you know where they found the best information? The United States. They looked at our system of government and what we had done with African Americans for centuries, how we subjugated them, how we affected them psychologically, how we created so much prejudice and discrimination against them, despite the laws that are supposed to protect them. And they got around laws, and that even today, it's difficult for true equality to exist. So the Nazis studied the Americans, and they told me, and they said how Hitler in particular loved the way we did lynchings when people got out of line. I mean, it's just horrendous to think of that. And just as an American who was born here, I think we were always taught that we're a country of justice and fairness and equality. And in truth, our Declaration of Independence, which is a beautiful document, our Constitution, which is a beautiful document, are good. We just don't live up to them, and we never have. And we need to own that. All right, next is, so how do we move on? How do we own it? The first thing is we have to remember. We have to know what happened, and we have to remember it. We can't sweep it under the carpet. The one thing that they do in Germany, which I really, really admire, is the young people are taught, every generation is taught exactly what happened with the Nazis, and they have museums that they attend. They go through they're taught all about the Holocaust. They're taught how it came about so that it can never happen again. They do not, it's not a matter of shame. And this is where it gets funny in this country. People say, oh, we shouldn't teach critical race theory because they're teaching white people to feel guilty. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with acknowledging what happened. And one young person in Germany said, and I love this, she's got just the right tone. She said, we didn't cause it. My generation did not cause it. So it's not that we feel guilty or responsible for it. However, we are responsible for acknowledging that it happened, understanding everything that brought it about so that we can make sure it does not happen again. Because if you don't know how it came about, it's very easy to happen again. And we continue to teach the generations after us. Schools go on field trips to the museums, to the concentration camps. So in other words, they keep it alive. And I think, honestly, in this country, we have just pushed it away. We don't acknowledge it, number one. And number two, we don't even want to teach history. I didn't know half of this. I didn't know half of what had gone on with Black people in this country until I got involved in all of this. So I resent that a little bit. I feel like my education let me down, but I also feel like we can't keep doing that. We've got to make ourselves better. Secondly, forethought. We have to look ahead. What do we want to do? How can we get through this together? Awareness of unconscious biases. That's really important to me, I think, because it's easy to recognize an obvious bias. I don't like this person because I don't like the way they act or whatever it is. I don't like the way they look. All right, and you have to work on that. Unconscious biases are those that you don't know you have, but you have a feeling and you don't know where it comes from. Or you have little kind of reactions to certain people and they don't make any sense rationally, but you don't know where they're coming from. And she gives another quick example, I'll tell you, of an Indian woman who was in her audience once, and they were talking afterwards, and Isabel Wilkerson said to her, "You're in the upper caste, aren't you?" And the woman said, "How did you know? I try so hard to not let that out. How did you know that?" And she said, "It's just from experiencing and living this, you pick up all these images over a lifetime and you have reactions that are unconscious. And that's why our generations are having the hardest time, because we still have all of that, but it's our job and our work to make it better each generation following us. We need more opportunities to cooperate with others as equals, absolutely, and that's the integration part of it. We need a full and complete education of our history. And this I like too, because this is my thing. We need to step outside of our own perspective. Well, this is an individual thing for all of us, not only politically, but anything that you say to yourself, all right, kind of analyze yourself, do some critical thinking. This is what I'm believing. This is what I'm thinking. These are my decisions. Why? Is it based in truth? Am I listening to all sides? Do I understand it? Or am I biased in some way? And seriously, go through your heart and your mind and see what you come up with. Empathize with people. That means feel what they feel. Put yourself in their place. I don't like the word sympathize for this. Some people use them synonymously. Sympathize typically means feeling sorry for somebody, and that has no place in this. It's empathize with full respect. Learn to listen to people, really take it in. Don't come back with your idea or a defensive move. Just sit back and really listen to people's experiences without judging. Just take it in and imagine what that feels like and what that would be like. And then finally, a lot of people use the word tolerance for character development and working together. And I never liked that word. I always felt like tolerance is more of a just put up with it type of thing. And we need to go beyond that. You don't have to love everybody. You don't have to, like everybody. We need to accept everybody. Respectfully respect everybody's humanity, everybody's gifts that they have to offer. And that's the direction I think we need to be going. And I hope we can. So I think, with all of you, I would love to hear, as far as the discussion goes, any thoughts you have, any things that some of you were born here, some of you were not, some of you have very different experiences of others of you. I'm really curious what you think of what I've said, if anything's brand new for you, or if this sounds like, that sounds like what's been going on. Any thoughts at all?
Thank you very much for that great presentation, Paula.
Oh, you're
very
welcome,
thought-provoking.
You're welcome.
I'm going to open it up to questions. Maury has his hand raised. Maury, you can go first.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula, for a very nice presentation. I checked out the book from the local library and I read part of it, but your presentation is very much appreciated. I want to share an experience in my family.
Okay.
My younger sister, 12 years younger than I am, she came to this country at the age of 22 many years ago. I was the first one in my family to come here in 1960.
Okay.
But then my sister came after she graduated from the university. And beautiful, handsome, I should say, 4 nephews and 1 beautiful niece. All well educated, all very well behaved, because the parents were just the best human beings that you can imagine. And so it's, all this Nazism, which is now followed by some people all over the world in different names, it's just a lot of BS. It has nothing to do with science.
I know. And we know that now.
I just wanted to share that experience.
Oh, thank you, Maury. Thank you, Maury. Any other thoughts or questions?
I'm here, John. Go ahead.
I was 16 when I left home. So when I came here, I didn't really know much about slavery or any racism, or I didn't know much about anything. But I met, the first man that I met here was from Virgin Islands, and he was Black. And we met, we fell in love, we got married, and firsthand I experienced what prejudice and racism was.
Mhm.
And I saw how people were treated him. He himself hadn't experienced that being from Virgin Islands. He didn't know what racism was when he came over here. He was totally shocked, as well as I was. So together we went through that, and it was heartbreaking because he was super intelligent. He has a degree in he has engineering, and right now he is a owner of like multiple rental units. He is well off, but yet when he walks wherever he's going, people look at him and immediately they like turn on their car, their whatever system, the theft system in their car, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And or they look at him, you know, weird, or it's just heartbreaking that somebody so intelligent is subject to such a difference. And I was too. And even my friends, Iranian friends, they would ask me like, what do you see in him? And I'm like, he's beautiful. He has beautiful eyes. He's, you know, he's gorgeous. He's like body of a god, you know. But all those questions were really amazing to me, or heartbreaking in a way.
I know.
So I was, and then I took Slavery to Freedom class in college, and I was exposed. And then I saw Roots, and every time I watched that, I just cry my eyes out.
I know.
Of what injustice was done to the people, and it hasn't gone away. We still experience it. We saw it during Trump's, you know, when he was the president, how it came out again. So it's an ongoing thing that we have to battle it. We have to, even in our own system, we have to fight it among Iranians. Sometimes we say things that we don't mean it, but it comes out from the movies that we watch.
Yes.
The TV shows that we watch, and we have to immediately refine that.
Thank you. Thank you, Amira.
Thank you, Amira. I want to go last. Is there any other comment before I go? All right. So I don't know if this is more of a question or a comment, but I think as Iranian Americans, a lot of us kind of grew up thinking that we're white as a sort of a superiority thing. And when we came, I mean, in my case, I came to the US when I was 12. I lived in Iran all the way to the age of 8 or 9, and another year after that. So only about, 20% of my life, or less than 20. I don't want to give away my age here, but I spent in Iran. I'm curious to know if anyone has sees Iran, those who've lived in Iran, sees that caste system within Iran. I know we have a very diverse country in Iran, ethnically. But I mean, one anecdote that comes to my mind in my young age was anytime I would often hear anything that happens, like in terms of crime in the neighborhood, it would always be, there was a lot of Afghans who have come into the neighborhood. So I would hear a lot of that theme, and I'm just curious if anyone else can kind of relate to that. I think Maury can. So I just wonder if you see Iran as a caste system of a different kind, a hidden caste system of a different kind. No, but usually we don't talk about Iran as a caste.
No, the differentiation in Iran is by language. So people from the area of Kurdistan are Kurds, the people from the area of Baluchistan are Baluchis, and they speak Farsi, Persian, but also they speak their own dialect. So we have Isfahanis, Shirazis, Azaris, and Khuzistanis, and so on. And so the caste system is not there. Just like the example that our speaker gave of the person who was from Africa and mentioned that they have that kind of differentiation, the differentiation. And of course, you know, the people in Iran, the Farsis, they don't look down upon the Kurds. They don't look down upon Isfahanis. They make jokes about each other that Isfahanis are very frugal and the Turks are very hardworking. But some of those jokes are not good, of course. But of course, you know, they're negative. But nonetheless, we don't have a caste system like they have it in India.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for the comments. And thank you again, Paula, for the presentation. By the way, do you guys hear all the clicking in my voice, or is it just me?
No, we hear it.
Oh, man. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm going to see if I can switch gears here. I'm going to start sharing here and try to change my audio if I can while I do this. Give me 1 second here. And let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, this will be the last topic.
Mazagay Rahimi has something to say.
Yeah, we have.
Yes, go ahead.
We have the election of the officers tonight, and that is. I want to make a move that we approve the slate of existing officers that we have, because as the election committee in the last 2 months, we didn't receive any candidacy for any of the offices. So the 4 offices that we have: president by Maz, secretary by Mary Lou, and treasurer by Amira, and of course our vice president is absent, but we can elect him, and then if he refuses to accept, then we would meet that challenge in the next few months. So I want to make that move, Maz.
I second that.
By acclamation.
I second that.
Okay. I guess the motion carries. Is that what we're supposed to say?
No.
We got to vote. We need to vote.
No, the by acclamation means, are there any objections?
I see.
No
So
objection.
Since it's a non-competitive, I think there won't be any objections. In the Iranian community, you have to twist the arms of people to get people to lead groups like this. So it's not surprising that we didn't get any nominations, but that's okay. I think we're all happy to continue in our roles. So if there's no objection, why don't we move forward? Thank you, Maury. Can you guys see my screen? Oh, wrong screen.
Not yet.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
See the screen.
You can see it. Okay, except it's the wrong screen. So let me get the correct screen. All right. Okay, just wanted to give a quick highlight of what's coming in the upcoming primary. Broad strokes here, nothing in depth, and maybe we can continue on a follow-up meeting if there's interest in learning more. But basically, as I said, primaries are more important than the general election. Here's some key dates. The reason this is always important is because May 9th you start receiving your ballot. So there's a date to keep in mind. And the voter registration deadline is May 23rd. I trust that everybody here is registered, but for those if you have family members who may be new to the area or new to California or new to the country, of course, you want to get them registered. Some quick facts. In the 2020 election, there were 17.7 million Californians who participated in the election, which is considered a pretty high turnout, and that's a presidential election. This June 7th is a primary, and historically, it has very low turnout. I don't have actual stats for historical turnout, but as I said before, I think this is where your vote actually matters even more. One thing that's new this year is we have vote by mail ballots permanently. So if you're registered to vote, you will get a you will have the opportunity to vote by mail. You don't have to vote by mail, but you can vote by mail, which is a great improvement to our election system. And I wish that would carry through the rest of the nation. Here's some quick numbers here about registered percentages. So this is, California has a population of 40 million. San Diego County, I think, is the second largest county in the state with 3.3 million. 70% of those are eligible to vote, 82% statewide. One thing that stands, and I should also say that the Democratic registration is, you know, has in recent years has been trending higher and higher relative to Republicans. But the other thing that's really worth noting is that this no party preference is a pretty feasible chunk of the electorate. But one other thing that I thought I'd highlight is the pre-registration. This is a relatively new concept in California where people who are not 18 can register to vote, pre-register to vote. That way they're ready to go when they turn 18. And that is kind of a good indicator of where people are leaning. You can see an even greater share of no party preference. So I think that's something to watch in the years to come. Both in San Diego and in the state level, you can see that percentage is considerably higher than Republicans, almost by a factor of 2 in San Diego. So one of the things that's always very challenging for, at least for me, but I'm sure for a lot of people as well, is understanding all these ballot measures. And I'm happy to report that there probably won't be one in your ballot in June. Certainly for November, I think we could repeat this and try to do a deep dive on some of the ballot measures to try to, as part of one of our missions is to educate the voters. I think that's something we can do. But the only measure that we found in the San Diego County was Measure C, which is in the city of Carlsbad. Nothing terribly interesting, but it is about the city clerk position being an appointed position. So most of you, I think we have some members in Carlsbad, so that might be interesting for them. But for the most part, you just have to worry about who to elect. There will be a US Senate race. And one thing that's noteworthy here is that there will be you get 2 votes for this for the price of 1. So you'll have to make a selection for the term that ends in June 3rd, 2023, and another one that's 6 years later. So I guess be on the lookout for that. So this is the incumbent here is Alex Padilla, who was appointed by Gavin Newsom when Kamala Harris vacated that office and became vice president. So he's vying for a more, a full term. And he has, as you can see, it's a pretty large field of challengers. Not a lot of big names from what I can tell, but if any of you know some of the people who want to make suggestions, we can't do endorsements. Endorsements have to follow a very strict process, but we can certainly take any thoughts you might have at the end. One of the other important things that happened in this election cycle is the redistricting. I put a map here on the right that's very difficult to read, but I do have links at the end of the presentation that you can refer to find interactive maps that can go down to the street level to see which district you are in, whether it's U.S. House or Assembly. There are 5 congressional districts in San Diego County, and the ones that are interesting to watch are 49, which has Mike Levin, who's the incumbent, and he's been pretty good on the issues, and he does have 1 Democratic challenger there and a bunch of Republican challengers. This is a historically Republican district, and it's considered a toss-up. So if you have any, if you want to push for more progressive policies, this is one to participate in. The other one I think that's worth highlighting is District 50, the new District 50, which is my district. And I think those of you who have heard me talk about this know very well how I feel about our current representative, Scott Peters. Not a huge fan, to put it lightly. And this primary season, you do have the opportunity to go for a more progressive candidate who does not take corporate PAC money, and who is more likely to respond to actual people than to big corporations like Scott Peters have been. There's also on District 52, there's also another interesting challenge there, Juan Vargas versus Joaquin Vasquez. The other ones are relatively, I don't think they're going to be too interesting. I think they're not that competitive. The governor who survived the recall of last year is going to have another election this time. And again, a pretty lively field of candidates. And I'm not seeing too many big names here either. And again, if anyone has recommendations, you know, please speak up, or we have maybe one more month to kind of digest this. But this is really just to give you kind of a feel of what to expect. That's not the only state race. There are 8 other states that I've listed here. The incumbents are shown in bold, and you can see, by the way, much of this information came from Cal Matters, and I've provided a link for anyone who's interested. You can kind of do a deep dive on the various candidates who are running in these elections. There's a lot to wrap your mind around. But basically, most of these have a Democratic incumbent. The only exception is Board of Equalization here at the bottom that has a Republican incumbent with 3 Democratic challengers. There's a few independents in here, some Greens that are worth a look. All right, and then at the California Senate level, we have 4 districts. One is a safe Democratic district, one is a safe Republican district. One's a hot race here, Catherine Blakespeare versus another Democrat and a Republican here. This is considered a lean Democrat. And then the bottom one here is District 40, which is now my new district, used to be in District 39. I suspect some of you have fallen into District 40 as well. And here we have Brian Jones, who's the incumbent, not a great guy from what I've seen. And maybe Joseph Rocha might be a good person to invite to one of our meetings so we can see what he's all about. There are 7 assembly districts in the San Diego County, and similar theme here. I'm personally not terribly excited about any of these candidates. Even most of the Democrats are kind of light Democrats, very centrist, very moderate, as we saw in the CalCare vote. But nevertheless, they are here. I'm not seeing too many seats being challenged. One exciting race is going to be at the bottom here that has Georgia Gomez going against David Alvarez in a fairly safe Democratic district. So besides that, there are a whole bunch of local races that I didn't have time to go into, and I think in the interest of time, I'll probably leave it at that. But just to say that there are San Diego City Council districts, District 2, 4, 6, and 8 are up for re-election. I think a lot of us are probably fall under District 2 and District 6, I suspect, where there's a lot of Iranian American residents. And there's also the Board of, actually that's the Board of Education. I thought there was county supervisors were in there too, but I'm not seeing them here. Anyway, there's a pretty large list of races to wrap your minds around. And I've just for completeness, I've included the redistricted city council here on the right, the new districts, and the supervisor districts on the left. I think that's my last slide. There's a bunch of links here. There is one of the links here is the WeDrawTheLinesCA.org. So if you're not sure which district you're in, you can use one of these interactive maps to find your exact district. All right, so I don't want to keep you guys up here much longer, so I just wanted to open it to questions or comments or rants.
Moz, can you send us these slides somehow?
Yes, I can certainly do that. In fact, I'll put it on the chat right now, and we can also send them out later as well. Okay, Amir John, you have a question?
Just a comment. I want to shout out to the not candidates, representatives who have been supporting us, that are supporting us. Two of them are Gloria, our mayor, Gloria, and also council member Raul Campillo, who is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think is either the husband or fiance of Nadia. Nadia, correct me.
That's right. We're getting married in August.
Huh?
Ah,
Who was it?
Fiance is the correct
Fiance.
term
That's
for
what
now.
I said, fiance. Who attended our Nowruz celebration of cultural center, PCC, and they stood there with patience and shook every hand and took pictures with everybody that wanted to take pictures with them very patiently. So shout out to them for supporting us and being with us.
awesome.
I'll go. I just wanted again to say, Paula, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was really educational, and just I wanted to read the book for a long time, but this is kind of the kick in the butt that I need, because it's just at the end of a day, it's like the last thing I want to pick up sometimes. It's like something that's very painful to read. And I got a preview of it from Oprah did a series on Apple, I think Apple TV. It's a 2-part series where people, where Professor Wilkerson was on, and one of the stories they told was about how, I want to say it was in the 50s, that there was some gathering at a pool party and all the white kids were in the pool, and then they had to evacuate and clear it for the one black kid to swim in the pool. And just, it's so painful. And the fact that we still, as you mentioned, have not been able to, even at the highest office, just say this was wrong and condemn it, and then we can move forward, is something that's so shocking to me, even still today. So thank you for just sharing that and encouraging us to read that important book on the history we didn't get.
Thank you, Nadia.
Mary Lou, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think part of the healthcare thing in the United States, why Medicare for all doesn't just grab people, is because there's a whole segment of the population that feels that not everybody is worthy of it. Not everybody is worthy to have healthcare. And of course, that's the Black people. And so they would rather not have it for themselves than let people who are unworthy have it. And so it's just in everything here. And who would think that somebody's thinking like that?
Right.
I mean, I would never, I could never come up with that myself. I wouldn't know how somebody could think like that, but that is, that's true.
So you guys know that I did a lot of texting in support of single payer healthcare, and one of the most common pushbacks I get is the will this be extended to undocumented people? Yeah. And I think that's one of those deliberate divide and conquer strategies that's been employed by the most powerful interests in this country to make sure that we work against our own interests, or not we, but many people work against their own interests and distract us with the undocumented immigrants, just so they can continue to be price gouged with their healthcare, and the healthcare executives can continue to line their pockets, to eternity. So it's very important to understand those dynamics. I think racism and this caste system, to me, everything boils down to economics at the end of the day. It's just a tool that is used to distract people and to get people fighting amongst themselves when they could be working for the greater good. And it's sad to watch this happen in modern day. I mean, we keep thinking, people get educated and they understand history, but it's sad to see these things repeat over and over when people are just fighting amongst themselves over what should really be the interest of the common interest.
Yeah.
So that was very, very, very good to hear about this this book, and I'm glad there's a lot of people focusing on this. All right. Any other? Amira John, you have your hand raised. Is that from before?
Yeah. I just want to share a moment with Paula for her book, for the book that she shared with us. I told you that I shared all these things with my ex-husband, and one of the experiences that I had is that I had somebody's friend that came from Iran and she was going to be my roommate. And she came from Turkey, so she was very fresh in here, fresh off the boat, they call it, and that's probably not the right word. But she just came here and she was telling me, she was really scared, and she was telling me that if you see, make sure you lock the doors, make sure you lock the bedroom, make sure you do this, and have a knife under your pillow, because the black people, they come and they cut your throat from ear to ear, and they do this and they do that. And she was giving me all kinds of stuff, and I'm listening to her very calmly. And I told her, finally, when she was done, I said, by the way, if a black guy knock on the door, don't be afraid, that's my ex-husband. She was like, what? You married one? I'm like, yeah, and as you can see, he didn't kill me. My hair is not cut. And he's very sweet, and he will do things for us. It was just so funny that I blew her brains. Just so you can share that, when you present the book.
Oh,
Yeah.
Maz, I think you're speaking, but you're on mute.
You're muted.
I think you're muted, Maz.
Sorry, you knew that was about to happen. Thank you again for spending your time. I think it's probably time to wrap things up. Thank you for spending your last 90 minutes with us, and hope to see you again.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
Thank you.